Hey there riders, Journo Kris here today, and I wanted to talk ergonomics and rider fit on the Hayabusa because this thing is enormous, but you might be surprised to find that the seating position and ergonomics are quite compact in comparison to the rest of the bike. Now I will have a full review up talking about riding the bike, but now I'm just gonna have a look at the ergonomics as I stated. So jumping on the bike, as you can probably see here, the seat to peg ratio is very, very short. It gives you a very engaged seating position between that seat and the pegs and onto the tank. And obviously that is important because with a bike offering so much performance both on the braking and the engine side of things, you need to be able to lock right into the bike. And that also comes into play with the bars, because the bars here, as you can see, they're a clip-on style bar, but they're right off the top of the forks, which means they're a lot taller than on like a super sport or a super bike style machine, but they still are quite, aggressively placed. Now, I wasn't finding that I had too much weight onto my wrists or anything like that, even though the bars are a little bit lower, because I was able to hold on very kind of strongly with my knees onto the tank and into the pegs and onto the seat. And as a result of that, I wasn't getting kind of that strain onto the bars. However, certainly I think if I was spending really long days on the bike, that probably would build up over time, simply because it is just that more aggressive kind of sporty seating position. You can get right down in, and you will be getting right down in on the bike when you're riding aggressively, simply because you want to get in behind that wind protection, particularly as the speed rises. In the more upright sitting position like this, I was finding a lot of the wind was still hitting my helmet, and I was getting a little bit of, not buffeting, but I was hearing the wind noise on the helmet. Now, talking about the controls, you obviously have your brake and your clutch lever, adjustable brake, adjustable clutch. They're both running a master cylinder, so it is a hydraulic clutch system, a little bit heavier than perhaps more traditional system, but it is what it is. You've got a simple switch block here on the left, it's a fairly simple switch block on the right with a cruise control kind of button on it there as well. And everything is accessed through the mode button and the two toggles, and using some slightly different settings between those two via that small TFT dash in the console, which is between the two big clocks, the tacho and the speedo. And then of course you've got a fuel and a heat gauge there as well. So they have mixed the kind of, the old and the new in offering that kind of dash setup. I would really have liked a digital readout of my speed, because while the clock is, somewhat easy to see, it's a pretty busy clock because it goes up to 300 kilometers an hour. And I always find it's just that little bit harder to see with that kind of style gauge exactly what speed you're at. And with, speed being such a concern these days, you do want to be able to see exactly what kind of speed you're doing. I will mention that the seat comfort was really good. It is quite a deep, plush seat, which has a good level of support, good level of overall comfort, particularly since I wasn't really moving around in the seat. So I think for longer rides, the seat is still going to be really suitable and going to work really well for you as a rider, which is again a really big boon, because you want good comfort, particularly because this bike, realistically speaking, not only does it go fast, but you're probably going to be doing big miles on the bike as well, and comfort is a concern. As well as that, I will mention the vision through those mirrors is pretty good. They're quite an aggressively styled mirror, and they give you great vision behind you. Not so much directly behind you, it's more kind of the lane on either side, so you do need to move around a little bit to do those checks to make sure that, the wrong kind of attention isn't behind you. But really, apart from that, a really nice setup overall. There's just a side stand on this bike, so as you can see here, very easy to get down onto the side stand. It is a very heavy machine moving around. It's quite well balanced, like it's 270 kilos. It's fairly well balanced. I wouldn't say it was any harder to push around than say the GSX S 1000, which is 210 kilos in comparison. However, the weight of the bike does mean if you were to get this past the tipping point, you're gonna really struggle and probably hurt yourself trying to stop the bike going over. And it's an interesting machine. While you don't feel the weight riding it under power, you will notice it when you're just rolling it around, and you do need to be careful. Rubber clad pegs there, as you can see, rubber clad pillion pegs. There was actually a little bit of vibes through the bars, but that was only really at high RPM, and overall, a very, very comfortable seating position. I don't have a pillion with me today, so I can't test out and I can't take off the cowl to have a look at what the comfort is for a second rider. Probably the one thing that I would mention is that when I rode the last generation Hayabusa, I just found the wind buffeting between my helmet and my pillion's helmet was quite bad. So I'd be interested to see whether that would still be a problem on this particular bike. But of course, that is always going to vary on the rider and the pillion height and the helmet design and a lot of factors. So that might have just been a one-off there. Obviously, fully adjustable suspension is nice to see if you're not quite the weight that the bike designer envisaged. You've got a little bit more room to play around with that, and that's just a boon. But obviously at $27,000 here in Australia, you would expect some pretty premium suspension on this bike. Anyway, that is a quick look at the ergonomics and rider fit of the Hayabusa. I guess the only other thing I would mention is that I didn't really move around on the bike all that much because I just didn't feel like I needed to, which was a little bit different, but is a testament to how good the handling is on this machine. And certainly I would probably say that if you are kind of getting more off the bike than I was, that's only going to help the handling even more. I just didn't really find it necessary, even up to some, pretty decent speeds. Now, just for reference, as I forgot to mention, I'm 180 centimeters, 32-inch inseam, and about 70 to 75 kilos. Keep watching for a bit more of a rundown of that dash from an onboard perspective. So let's have a look at the dash. Obviously, as you can see here, you've got the two main clocks, tacho, speedo, fuel, and then a temperature gauge as the secondary, and a central TFT display. So they've kind of gone between the traditional and the high tech. Hydraulic clutch is a little bit on the heavier side. You can hear the bike there. Probably I'll leave that off for the moment. We've got a mode button. So as you can see here, it'll let me go through the modes: A, B, C, user 1, user 2, user 3. Yeah, so there we go. So in B mode, power 2, traction control 5, lift control 5, electronic brake control off, quick shifter 1. Let's go up to... Let me go back into A mode. Alright, that's why. A mode, power 1, traction control 1, lift 1, brake control off, quick shifter 1, and C, which is, your wet weather mode, power 3, traction control 10, lift control 10, electronic brake control, or EB, I'm assuming that's what it is, off, and then quick shifter 2. So it's a tap on the mode button to go through your modes, and then it's like a long hold to, go through the other settings. As far as the actual dash itself, what have we got here? Oh yeah, so holding down the set, which makes sense. Riding set, so display, riding, RPM, hill hold, brightness, blah, 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 blah. Let's see if... Yeah, so there you go. So we got the user modes there. And as you can see, like user 1 is set to power mode 1, which is going to be the most power, and then everything else is basically turned off except the quick shifter, which is set to 1. And yeah, there you go. So that's a little bit of an idea. Hopefully you've been able to see kind of what's going on there with this footage as far as running through that dash. Anyway, if you've got any questions at all, just let me know down below in the comments. As always, I will do my best to answer them. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching, and you can support the channel on Patreon.